As we wind down from our celebration of National Creative Vacuum Day last week, let's get ready to get pumped back up for an even more awesome science holiday. This week, Dub Geographic is celebrating one of the most influential scientists of all time, Charles Darwin. We will speak with the man himself to get some insights into his theories of evolution and natural selection. All that and more coming up. I'm your host, Maddie Peterson, and you're watching Dub Geographic. Next Monday, on February 12th, we will be celebrating the birth of the one and only Charles Darwin. Darwin was an incredibly influential scientist and author whose ideas shaped the foundations of Victorian society. Most well known for his book, On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, Charles Darwin coined the term natural selection and was one of the founding fathers of the theory of evolution, known as transmutation back in his time. Furthermore, Darwin is known for waiting almost 20 years to publish his groundbreaking text, and his hesitation is a hotly debated topic. But for all the juicy details, I got to sit down with the man himself to talk about his life and his theories. Today, I'm here with special guest Charles Darwin. Welcome to the show. Would you care to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your background?
Yes, hello. I'm Charles Darwin. I was born in 1809, and I attended the University of Edinburgh in 1825 to study medicine. However, the sight of blood makes me a bit nauseous, so I decided to go to Cambridge to study divinity instead. However, my true passion is for biology, and I spent much of my time there studying beetles.
After you graduated from Cambridge in 1831, you went on a 5-year expedition on the HMS Beagle. What can you tell me about that experience?
Well, the seasickness was beyond what I could imagine, but other than my upset stomach, I was able to go to 4 continents to study all sorts of different species.
Sounds really awesome. In 1835, you arrived at the famous Galapagos Islands. What was so unique about this location?
Well, just a number of species. In the Galapagos, I was able to study finches, tortoises, and mockingbirds. And this location wasn't incredibly special, but through my journey, my observations have begun to lead me to some very interesting conclusions.
So you have all these theories and conclusions, and you return home and write them down, but you wait almost 20 years to publish. Can you give us kind of some insight as to why?
Well, as a Christian, I was worried about how my findings would disrupt society and the current beliefs, and just generally go against what the church had said. My grandfather Erasmus had written about transmutation, and he'd been rejected by the scientific community years before. Furthermore, I was plagued by sickness. The deaths of my children, it just left me unmotivated to continue.
Can you tell me a little bit about Alfred Russel Wallace?
Yes. Alfred Russel Wallace was another naturalist who sent me a letter in 1858 and with his own findings of his theory of natural selection. And that made me realize that I had to publish something before someone else did. The findings from both of our papers were presented to the Linnaean Society in 1858. So.
That's awesome. You published On the Origin by Means of Natural Selection in 1859, so a year after that. Can you tell me what happened after you published?
Well, because natural selection was so different and such a widely debated topic in the scientific community, however, I was not a public defender of my theory, and I left the great Thomas Huxley in charge of debating my ideas.
So through kind of the debate of your ideas, you come upon survival of the fittest. Can you tell me about that?
Survival of the fittest was a term I got from a philosopher, Herbert Spencer. And in general, it just is a law that says the advancement of all organic beings, namely multiply, vary, and let the strongest live and the weakest die.
About a decade after you published On the Origin, you published The Descent of Man. What was that about?
The Descent of Man was an unequivocal account of human evolution. Even though my theories had gained some acceptance, society was still divided on the idea that humans shared a common ancestor with apes.
Some interesting stuff there. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for all of your contributions to the scientific community.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, Darwin passed away in 1882, but for all of his efforts, he was honorably buried in Westminster Abbey, alongside British royalty and many other famous philosophers, scientists, and war heroes. This coming Monday, please take a minute to celebrate the life of the amazing Charles Darwin. By celebrating, you are honoring the ideas of intellectual bravery, curiosity, and hunger for truth that Darwin in his life represents. A great way to celebrate is to get outside and appreciate how all of nature has gotten to where it is today. An awesome place to do that is at Greenfield Lake. Dub Geographic heads out to the lake to show you all it has to offer.
Hello, and welcome to Greenfield Park at Greenfield Lake. There's so much to do here. Have a look.
Established in 1925, Greenfield Lake Park and Gardens is the perfect place to spend a day outdoors in any season. The park has 250 acres of land and features the lake, a 5-mile walking or biking trail, tennis courts, and a skate park. Greenfield Park is a great place to have fun with friends, go for a bike ride, or commune with nature. Head over to the Hugh Morton Amphitheater for a show or walk down to the docks to rent a paddle boat or kayak. But please remember to refrain from feeding the wildlife. They are perfectly capable of finding food for themselves. I hope you all enjoy getting to have a conversation with Charles Darwin, and make sure you go check out Greenfield Lake. Be sure to tune in next week for a look up in the sky at the blue moon. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to UNCW TealTV, and see you next week, Seahawks. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.